okay, let's find the repertoire this guy plays?
Yeah, they were the first couple of songs which set the whole thing in motion. The whole, it's funny, the whole movie's sort of about saying goodbye, right? The first song's Hang Me, and the next one's Farewell, and then, you know, that keeps coming up all through the film, and then at the end he even says, au revoir. They do it in French, and, you know, finally.
And meanwhile, Bob Dylan's up there singing Farewell, but what he really means is get out of the way, I'm
Yeah.
here. So what was, obviously there's so much music of that era that you could have drawn from, so what was the approach when you sat down with the Coens and said, okay, what are the songs for this guy?
Well, it's always tone. It's always looking for the tone. What's the tone of the movie? Who is the character? So first you're looking for tone, then you're looking for the character. So we knew his first two songs, and that set the boat in motion, and then everything had to follow, had to make sense coming from that. So we went back into the past, and we went. The last song we recorded was a version of Queen Jane that we did like with 12-string guitar, like a folk rock version of Queen Jane from like 1965. That will show up probably in about 3 years or something.
Well, there is that great line in the movie about never new, never gets old. It's a folk song. I mean, I guess that's the well you're drawing from here.
That's right. You know, this music is, well, music was for centuries has been used to teach mathematics, language, history. We passed knowledge from generation through music. That's what Homer was, right? So all of this is just constantly reinventing Homer, really. You know, seriously, so you take these songs, these old songs that have been handed down, and reinvent them for the time we're in. But it's all history. That's what I love about the Coens film. And then I'll start talking a little bit. You know, every shot in every one of their films has history in it. There's never a camera just put somewhere to get from here to there. There's some reason it's there. You know, that's the first thing that captivated me about them, is how much meaning was in every shot, in every frame.
So Oscar, you were an actor, but you played music on the side. I mean, how did you hear about this? What was was it something immediately you said, yeah, that's for me?
Yeah, I heard about it on the internet, and then I told my representation that they were fired if they didn't get me into this room, because I just wanted, you know, they're my favorite filmmakers, and I've been playing music for a long time, and so when the time came, I was able to get an audition for the casting director, and then brought me back for the Brothers, and then a month later I heard they got the part. Yeah, but yeah, I was playing for a long time, but I didn't play this particular style of music.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't a folk singer at all, right?
I wasn't much of a singer. I sang badly for many years. Yeah, just kind of getting all the bad singing out of the way for this.
Now, you told me that you were making a movie in Pittsburgh, and you were bored, so you just started playing acoustic in clubs in Pittsburgh?
Yes. I told you that.
But you didn't tell them that.
I didn't tell them that, no. I told them that. And yeah, it's true. It was kind of serendipitous, because it was a couple years before. The whole thing has been kind of crazy, the way it's like the exact opposite of everything that happens to LLEWYN. You know, it's like things have just kind of fallen into place in such a great way. Yeah, I just started playing a lot. Decided to go and play at some open mics down there, and you know, that got me more used to it. And then at one point, I remember when I did get the audition for the Coens, I needed to. One of the things, going back to the music thing, when you were auditioning for this movie, it said the description was, "This is not Bob Dylan. He is not the genius poet. This is the blue-collar workman," and you know, which was inspired by Van Ronk. This guy Dave Van Ronk, who was a staple of the Village at the time, and you know, he was from the boroughs. He was a merchant marine. Dylan stole House of the Rising Sun from him. You know, but I guess that's what all folk music is. It's just theft. But yeah, and so anyway, I was doing this little movie, tiny little independent film, and then there was a guy that was playing an extra drunk guy at the bar. He was an older gentleman, and in between takes, I was trying to learn this style of playing, this Travis picking, this really kind of complicated style, and I hadn't really played it before. And there was a guitar lying around, and he picked it up, and he just started Travis picking like a motherfucker. I mean, he was amazing. He was so good, and I was like, oh my God, you're incredible. And he was like, well, you want guitar lessons? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Have you heard of this guy, Dave Van Ronk? I'm kind of auditioning for this thing that's loosely based on him. And he's like, yeah, I played with Dave. And so he's like, come over to my place. And I said, where do you live? He's like, I live on McDougal Street above the old gas light. Been there since '68 or something. And so I go to this guy's place, and he starts teaching me how to Travis pick, and he plays me all these old recordings, some of them with Dave Van Ronk. He asked me how long I've been playing guitar, and I said, about 20 years. And he goes, no, you've owned a guitar for 20 years. You've been playing for like 6 months, man. And he just gave me a crash course on the thing just to get into the audition. And then once that happened, meeting with T-Bone, who's like the musical Mr. Miyagi, he just complete, just mind-blowing, just the way, very organic, just stripping away all the waxing away all of the artifice to get to the crane kick.
So T-Bone, what was it about his audition? I know the Coens took it to you and said, what do you think?
Well, I've been sitting around for almost 50 years listening to the most extraordinary, like Bob Dylan and Donnie Everly and Willie Nelson and Lawrence Zevon. I mean, I could go on for, sitting around rooms, listening to people play songs on an acoustic guitar, songs they'd written and stuff. So, like, who's good is really evident, after all this time. It's not a mystery anymore. And also, this thing, sort of, everybody understands the folk process now. When I was a kid, no one understood the folk process. Dylan did, He understood how the folk process turns into, houses all over the world and things like that, like Ralph Peer did, right? Some people understood the transition from, prior art to copyright to, the mercantile world. What's mercantile anyway? Things you sell, is that it? Yeah. Is it clothes or just anything? I don't know. Where do we get to
tonight?
that?
It can be whatever you want.
Well, where were we? What are we talking about?
That's what I'm talking about. See, it's like like the Mr. Miyagi thing. It's like so indirect and deep, and I'm like, what did I miss? Did I miss it? And then like you'll be driving home and be like, oh my God, that's what he meant.
What was the question?
I think you were getting around to
was it about
Oscar's
me?
audition. Yes, you were talking about you know good when you hear it.
Oh yeah, they did. They sent Oscar's tape, and he had one of those slouch hats on, like this across his face. You could only see like this much of him. He was like this. But he started singing the song, and he sounded like one of those cats. He sounded like one of the cats. He sounded like, I thought, okay, this is one of the cats. This is actually, he's doing it. Just regular, real time. And the thing was that the Coens wanted to make a film about a musician. So the amount of detail you can get about a musician, like right here, right? When you're like right here and the guy's singing and playing, for real, you get so much more detail about that person, that performance, what's going on than you ever can doing a virtual version of it later. Doing a pre-record and then having the person lip sync it, and then or all the other manifestations of tuning and everything you can do now. This was actually just the thing. It was just watching the actual thing happen, and it's pretty amazing. I want to say nobody in the history of the cinema has ever done this. What Oscar did is true. Like, think about it, 3-minute songs, learning to play and sing a whole repertoire, and then doing them live, completely live, without a click track, without anything. It's pretty amazing, and not just doing it once, but doing it several times. got 30 takes, so we didn't use any click tracks. So, you know, if the tempo's not the same between takes, then you can't cut from take to take, because you can't stretch picture the way you can stretch audio. So if the take speeds up or slows down just a little bit, you're done. You can't use it. You can't use any other picture you've shot that day. And you're working we did literally, no lie, on a couple of the tunes we did 30 takes live all day. That's all day. And he never, and the energy remained the same, and the tempo remained the same. He went into some kind of hardcore zen. Maybe I am Mr. Miyagi. It was far out. I'm not kidding. I don't know. I've never seen anybody who could do that. You know, Bob Dylan couldn't do that. I'll tell you for sure.
Bob Dylan doesn't need to do that.
He can do other things. He could levitate this building. But he couldn't do that.
So Oscar, how did you do it?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think because it's not like it's not always been the case. I think it's something about when I'm figuring out this style of playing that I hadn't done before. I think once I clicked into this particular thing, and I honestly was obsessiveness. It was just doing it every single day, you know, nonstop. I think that's what it was, you know. And we did these pre-records, and so before we started shooting, we had a good week where we just got to the studio. It was Avatar Studios, which is one of the last fully analog studios in New York City, and we figured out all the music, and it was Marcus Mumford and Timberlake and the whole cast and the Punch Brothers, and we and T-Bone put the lighting down and put couches out in the studio and burnt Palo Santo and other things, and then we just played music, man. And then we got to take that home and listen to it and just practice and practice and practice and practice.
Yeah, it was good to, you know, and I've done this with most of the films I've done, but certainly with the Coens, we've recorded every film ahead of time so that you can lay out the soundtrack, you know, ahead. You can put it just in the order. If you listen, one of the interesting things about this soundtrack and the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack, they're just essentially the film, the running order of the film straight down. So if you can do that, if you can tell the story musically and visually at the same time, then powerful things can happen, you know, unexpected powerful things can happen.
So before you started shooting, you came out to LA and hung out with T-Bone, and what was that process like?
Well, the first thing we did was we went to get LLEWYN's guitar, to find LLEWYN's guitar. So we went out to Norm's Rare Guitars and played a bunch of different guitars, and then when I picked up this little L1 1924 Gibson, it just was the right one. We both said, that's it, that's LLEWYN's guitar. And then I remember going over to T-Bone's and my guitar ready to do work, and he said, have you heard the new Tom Waits record? And put that on and left the room for an hour. That was lesson one. and it went on from there. It was that kind of thing.
So what was the point of lesson one, T-Bone?
Oh, well, you know, we had to create a character. And I really think Waits has created the most profound music character of anybody, really, right now. Or you know, a distinct person who's taken that music. You know, that music, the first person to really take that music and twist it in an interesting way was Elvis. It's all these songs are the same songs for a few hundred years. We've defined ourselves in this country through music since the Revolutionary War and you know, the Star Spangled Banner and the Civil War, the Battle of the Republic and John Brown's Body, through the whole century of civil rights music from the last century, all that, you know, Woody Guthrie. It actually started, listen, when the United States record industry went down south and started recording the poorest people in the country and broadcasting their stories and voices around the world, that was the deepest act of democracy we've ever performed in this country. It's the first time that had ever happened. Yeah, probably in the world. You know, Blind Willie Johnson's Dark as the Night, Cold as the Ground just left our solar system on Voyager, you know, just now. It's pretty heavy, man, when you think about that. That's